What is up, everybody? It's Connor here from Unscripted, back again with another video. In today's video, I will be giving my thoughts on the CDL opening weekend, just how the matches went down, a little bit of a recap, just my thoughts on the event as a whole. And as always, I'll be doing it without the script. So before we get into the video, though, I ask again, as I always do, if you could drop a like on the video down below. It would help me out a lot in growing the channel and getting more eyes on the videos. And then, of course, subscribing to the channel as well. I would greatly appreciate that. I'm going to make my goal here 50 subscribers by maybe the end of March. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll have to change that a little bit, but that's my goal. Another announcement: be on the lookout this week for all kinds of CDL content. I'm doing this event recap. I will be doing an updated power rankings. I'll be doing a top 5 standout players from the event and whatever else I have time for. And then I'll be right back into the preview for the next event because the next the next week of games starts Thursday. So we're going to be right back into it. There's a lot to talk about, so hopefully I have time to talk about it all. But anyway, let's get right into the video. So my thoughts on the event as a whole, I thought the event went pretty well. Just in terms of like a production value, I thought the production was pretty good. There is a little bit of a kind of a bug, if you want to call it that. It's just the way it is with, virtually streaming the events. But when the casters, they're talking, they're saying what's happening just a little bit before we're seeing it, it can kind of get frustrating in big moments, a big 1v1 or whatever, a big clutch moment in search, really just any big gunfight. And sometimes the caster will say what happened before we actually see it, so that kind of spoils the suspense a little bit, but that's obviously nitpicking. All things considered, though, with the pandemic and everybody working virtually and remotely, I think they're doing a really good job. Just the visuals are awesome. The pre-match hype videos are cool. They're doing a good job. All the production value is just really high right now, and it'll be better for sure as we move back to hopefully back to LAN. Everybody's in person because the casting will definitely be better, and it won't be that awkward, green screen behind the table type thing where their hands look really big or their head looks really big or whatever else. But all things considered, I think the production value was pretty good. I think the event went okay. There was the issues with a couple of resets, and that Rocker and Dallas hardpoint got played the whole game through until they finally reset. That reset with New York and LA, I believe it was, and it was 100-0, and there was no reset. Stuff like that, it shouldn't take that long in my opinion. But obviously, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes either to make a for sure judgment on that. But it can just kind of be someone who's new to it might be their first time watching, and they're new to Call of Duty, and they see that, and then they realize it gets reset and none of it counted. It could confuse them a little bit. So I just think a little bit quicker with the resets or whatever else. But unfortunately, with playing online, there's going to be problems like that with lag and server interruptions and all that. It's just going to happen. So hopefully it's limited, and they can do a good job of handling them. But yeah, overall, I think the event went pretty smoothly, and that's my thoughts on that. So let's move into the matches and the standings. All right, so as you can see, here are the updated standings for the 2021 season. You can see on the screen Group A and Group B. LA Thieves, a little bit of a surprise maybe, leading Group A right now 2-0. They obviously did not play as tough of teams as the Dallas Empire did, who fell to 1-1 with their loss to the Minnesota Rocker, who are also 1-1 as you see. Seattle Surge 1-1. They had a victory over London. London, who's 0-1, and New York as well 0-1 with their loss to LA. Then on the other side, Group B, Atlanta FaZe, they go 2-0 after that big win over Optic, and they also swept, I believe it was LAG. Toronto 1-0, a very impressive showing for them against Florida. Optic falls to 1-1. They swept Paris, and then they did fall to FaZe 3-2, which we'll talk about in a little bit. LAG 1-1 with the win over Paris and the loss to FaZe. Florida 0-1 with the loss to Toronto, and Paris with the losses to LAG and Optic Chicago. They are 0-2. So that's the standings, nothing crazy, surprising, or anything like that. FaZe, we expect to be at the top. Optic, we expected to be right there. LA Thieves, again, it may be a little bit of a surprise they're 2-0. Not really, though, considering the teams they played. And, they made quick work of them. They look really sharp in the respawns. We'll talk about their games here in a little bit. Chicago 1-1, no big surprises there. So overall, it's only one weekend. You can't put too much stock into what the standings are right now because before the first major, they're definitely going to change a lot. And as each team plays everybody, if you didn't play the good teams yet, your record's going to be better. If you played the good teams, someone like, or even like LAG, they're 1-1, but obviously they played FaZe, they weren't going to beat FaZe, so who knows how that was going to go, whatever. So you just have to, as the teams play each other more, the standings will start to shake out a little bit more like what we expected, in my opinion. But for right now, that's what they are. And let's move into some individual matches. All right, so rather than individual matches, we're going to be starting with an individual team first off, and it's the LA Thieves. I'll put their results on the screen here. So their first match against the Minnesota Rocker, they win the first hard point 250 to 194. They lost the search, which is to be expected between these two teams. Minnesota's a pretty good search team. LA definitely better in the respawns. LA takes the control 3-1, and then the last hard point 250 to 60. They just dominated the respawns big time on that Moscow hard point. So that was impressive from them. Yeah, they look sharp in this series for sure. Like I said, they're not the search team that Rocker is, so that wasn't a surprise to see Rocker beat them in the search, but it was a bit of a surprise in my opinion. Rocker's not considered a great respawn team, but they were just getting dominated in the respawns. LA looked great, and it was just a strong showing from them. But then you move on to the match with their subliners, which I'm going to throw on the screen right now. So against the subliners, you'll see they won 3-0. So on the surface, it's like, wow, that's a good win. But you look at the matches and just check how close they were. So the hard point was 250 to 241. New York led something like 230 to 180 in that, so that could have easily went to New York. 6-5, they won the search. LA did. New York led that one 5-3, I believe. So that could have easily been a win for New York as well. And then even the raid control was a couple of gunfights here and there. It could have been a different story. So really, I mean, New York could have won this series 3-0. So while LA won the series 3-0, they weren't completely dominant like they were against the Rocker. They definitely could have lost these games, and it was honestly a strong showing for New York, who fell to 0-1. They only played this one game, but they look solid, and I have a little bit higher hopes for them than I had originally. Despite a 0-3 loss, they looked sharp. They were right there in all these games, and a couple of situations go differently, and they're 1-0. And they're not going to consistently blow 50-point hardpoint leads or 5-2 or 5-3 search leads. So if things start to shake out a little bit, but they put themselves in the good situations, they will win some of those key gunfights and they will find themselves with some wins. So that's kind of how I feel about the LA Thieves right now. They're 2-0. They look great against Rocker, not so much against New York, but they're 2-0. They're at the top of the standings. That's all they could really ask for right now. Another match worth talking about, I think, is Toronto versus Florida. Both of these teams only played this one game, and it was a surprise for me. Florida coming into the event, consensus, they were pretty much the number 4, maybe number 5 team for most people. Toronto was in that 6, 7, 8 range, and they came out and they just put a beat down on Florida for the most part. I'll throw the results up on the screen, and you can see them with me. So they won the first hard point by almost 100 points on Garrison, I believe it was. Yeah, that was just a strong showing there. They won the search, which wasn't a huge surprise. Mention Awakening, I think, had a 2.6 KD in that search. He played well. Florida took the control 3-2, and then Toronto whooped them again in the second hard point, 250 to 177. So overall, I mean, that was a little bit of a surprise for me. Just not necessarily that Toronto won, but just the way they won, just dominating Florida in the respawns for the most part. Florida, a pretty good slaying team. Toronto, not a team I think of when I think of some of the elite slayers. So for them to play that well, that was a big boost for them to boost them up in those standings a little bit to get a good win over a tough Florida team. Cammy played very well for them. Methods played well at times. All of them made some good individual plays. It was a good series for them. Florida, they still have the talent for sure, but it just wasn't a good kickoff to their season. Now they will, of course, have plenty of time to bounce back before the first major, but a little bit of a surprise in this result for me. Like I said, maybe not just the Ultra one, but the way they won was surprising. It was impressive for them, and they will look to continue on their momentum next weekend. Second to last match I want to talk about was also the second to last match of the weekend. So it was the Dallas Rocker versus the Dallas Empire versus the Minnesota Rocker. Minnesota takes the series 3-2. Surprising to some people, but not super surprising to me. I did pick Empire, but I was not surprised at all to see Rocker come away with it. And it just went, kind of as we expected. As you see, Dallas 250 to 201 in both the hard points, which is kind of interesting. Garrison and Checkmate, but that's to be expected. Like I said earlier, Rocker not a great respawn, specifically not a great hardpoint team. Control's kind of fluky, so you can win those even if you're not a great respawn team. But hardpoint, you could have expected Dallas to take those. But I mean, look at the searches. Dallas not a bad search team by any stretch, and Rocker take them 6-3 and 6-2, combined 12-5 in the map count. Definitely an impressive showing for Rocker. Especially after that stinker in the respawns against LA, they just came out and showed that yeah, we know we're not the best respawn team, but we're still a very good search team. Priesta and Major Maniac just a really good duo in the searches. Major Maniac made a bunch of plays. They all made individual plays. Accuracy and Attached did too. Attached won how many 1v1s it seemed like in one of the searches. So they all played well. It was a big win for Minnesota, who I think is a good team. They'll bump up some people's power rankings a little bit, but they did have that bad loss to LA Thieves. So You never know how that's going to go. But regardless, it was a big win for them. And Empire, nothing to worry about. Of course, they'll be fine. We know how good they are. But yeah, I mean, they definitely have to tune it up in the search and destroys a little bit, as does a team that we're going to talk about next. But yeah, that is the Minnesota Rocket versus the Dallas Empire. And finally, we get to the big match of the evening, the main event, if that's what you want to call it. Optic Chicago versus Atlanta FaZe. As you're going to see, Optic did fall in the series 3-2 to the Atlanta FaZe. Not a huge surprise, depending how you think about it. So it wasn't. You figured Atlanta FaZe would win the searches, right? I mean, that's to be expected. So if it got to game five, Atlanta was definitely favored. But for them to come out and just dominate the searches and win 12 rounds to one between two searches, that's just bad on Opt. I mean, it's bad on Optic's part, but it's good on FaZe's part too. You know, Abizi was just making crazy plays. Arceus was playing well. They all played very, very well in this series for Atlanta FaZe. Maybe a surprise to some people that Optic lost the Moscow hard point. They only lost by 5 points, of course, so it was a very close game. They were pretty much one kill away. Abizi had a big three-piece that if they killed him, they pretty much would have soaked up the win. So there's two ways to look at this, right? So there's the way to think about it. Okay, well, Optic lost 3-2 and they got smoked in the searches. You know, that's not good. But the other way to look at it is they were one kill away from never even getting to that second search and destroy. They would have won 3-1. Yeah, we'd still be talking about their search problems because they would have lost the only search they would have lost 6-0. So it would have been a problem, but they would have never got that second search, which they again just got dominated in. But you know, Optic, they didn't play the best. They played okay. That first hard point was close. They made a big play at the end to take the lead. The control was close as well, as is to be expected with control. That's the way it plays right now. But other than Dash, you know, he had a good event. Nobody else for Optic really had a great event, so they will definitely be better in the future. But for FaZe, I mean, they look sharp right now. They've got to be number one in the power rankings, which, again, I'm going to make a video about the power rankings in a little bit. But, you know, overall, very good series for them. They do need the they can probably get a little better in their respawns, but at the same time, you know, Optic's arguably the best respawn team. So even to be beating them in a hard point and being competitive in the other hard point, they're very competitive in the other hard point. It's a good series for them. And like I said, just to dominate the search, they show that, you know, they went back to 4v4, but they are still very good at search. The best search team in the league, in my opinion. And yeah, Atlanta FaZe improved to 2-0, and Optic Chicago fall to 1-1 with the loss. Overall, I think the biggest takeaway from the event really is just that there's a lot of good teams in this league. It's the most talent. They keep saying it. It's the most talent we've ever seen in the Call of Duty League, and it's true. You know, I think the top three teams are still the top three teams: Atlanta, Dallas, and Chicago. But man, number 4 to number 7 or 8, it's just a complete toss up. There's a bunch of really quality teams in there who are capable of beating any team on any given day. You know, depending on the circumstances. So it's just it's going to be a fun year. That's the big takeaway. It's going to be a fun year for from a fan's perspective to watch these games with all these closely contested matches and just very close in town. A lot of these teams are. There's going to be games that can go either way constantly. You know, we didn't see a ton of 3-2s, but then we saw all three matches on Sunday go to game 5. So it's just there's going to be a lot of close competition between these top and these middle level teams. Really looking forward to it. I'm just excited to watch and excited to talk about it with you guys. So that's going to wrap up this video. Like I said, be on the lookout later this week for an updated power rankings and as well as a top 5 players or top 5 standout players from the weekend. And then we'll be right into next week with previews and predictions and all that good stuff. So again, I thank you for watching. Don't forget to drop a like down below and leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you thought of the event. Subscribe to the channel for future videos on the CDL. So thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.